Coming up on UCF Nightly News, Orlando police officers make less than the national average. Find out what OPD says about its salary.
And the Orlando Bike Share rolled out this January. Reporter Charles Baber tells us how the program is doing.
In the first top 10 match of UCF baseball history, find out how the Knights stacked up against the Gators.
You're watching Nightly News covering the UCF community and the greater Orlando area.
Nightly News starts now. Good afternoon and welcome to Nightly News. I'm Lila El-Tuni.
And I'm Stephanie Muniz. Today is Friday, March 6th. Salary.com reports police officers in the City Beautiful make less than the national average. But here in Orlando, law enforcement say they put safety before salary. And I spoke with officials who say regardless of what they earn, making a difference is priceless.
Do law enforcement officers in Orlando get paid enough for what they do? And the answer to that is absolutely no.
$42,000 a year. An FBI crime report shows that's about 8% below the national average. And the Bureau of Labor Statistics reports the average police officer in the U.S. makes more than $58,000 a year. Ross Wolf devoted 24 years to bring safety to the streets of Orlando as a law enforcement officer. Now he teaches criminal justice at UCF and finds it common for people to consider a job with less risk and more pay.
And agencies have to think about when they look at hiring individuals, are we paying a competitive rate to some other positions that are out there? And sometimes law enforcement is on the low end of that.
But a recruiter for the Orlando Police Department says he and many others didn't get into the field because of the money.
I wanted because I wanted that. I felt like I could make a difference. And a lot of people that I interview, they feel the same way.
Leonel Santiago looks for officers who are passionate about the community. And although he only hires 35 to 40 officers yearly, he says he receives more than 6,000 applications each year.
The caliber of people that are coming into this department are driven by other things than just, money or benefits.
And with a team dedicated to making the community a better place, he feels it's a job you can't put a price tag on.
I'm reminded how lucky I really am to be part of this great family.
The Orlando Police Department offers free training academy for those looking to work in the field. To compare police salaries locally and nationally, visit nightlynews.ucf.edu.
Spring break officially starts tomorrow, and some students are traveling while others are staying local. But what are you doing to stay safe? If you're traveling abroad, Centers for Disease Control officials say you must be aware of where you're going. Check for travel warnings, make sure you take all your proper documentation, and be aware of local laws and customs. And if you're staying closer to home, UCF police officers say to lock your doors and windows before you leave home. But no matter where you're headed, Officer Joel Witherspoon offers this piece of advice.
Be not to overindulge. If you're going to party, party smart. If you're going to drink, drink in moderation. Always remain in control of your faculties.
UCF officials also recommend you take expensive items with you if you leave town. And don't post where you'll be on social media.
Lawmakers are back in Tallahassee and they're ready to make some changes. Governor Rick Scott delivered his State of the State address to the legislature on Tuesday to talk about progress in Florida. He says he wants higher education to be more affordable for students. This includes getting rid of state sales taxes on college textbooks and not raising the cost of tuition. Congressional leaders also want to make texting and driving a primary offense, allowing police officers to pull someone over for texting behind the wheel.
The FCC approved new net neutrality rules last week. Now, the issue is back to a national discussion. Nightly News reporter Jack Ebel is live in the newsroom with more. Jack, net neutrality can be a pretty tricky topic, right?
Yes, Lila, and tricky is a great word for it. The concept of net neutrality has always been a complex issue, but with some people praising the ruling, do we really know what it means to have net neutrality? By definition, net neutrality means open internet. But what does it mean to have an open internet? Dr. Kimberly Voss, an associate professor of journalism at UCF, says it's about giving everyone, big or small, equal use of the internet.
Net neutrality means that you now have equal power on the internet to all the big players. right? Without net neutrality, it allows kind of corporations to buy speed and makes them stronger.
The ruling has some of the voices of the tech community saying this is a huge win for the First Amendment, but others say this is everything but a victory and could lead to an FCC power grab. Dr. Voss says this wouldn't be the first time the FCC tried.
The FCC should have limited powers, but they've been seeking to gain more and more over the years. And the Supreme Court is the place where we'll see that battle play out.
She also says this issue always goes through the judicial system.
As a regulatory agency, they've often pushed to have more and more power, and then the courts will push them back so they can't have quite so much power.
So although the vote was last Thursday, the conversation is far from over. And that conversation can't start until the more than 300-page document is released to the public. But don't expect net neutrality to go away quietly. Reports show the House filed a bill this week challenging the ruling. It is known as the Internet Freedom Act. Live in the newsroom, Jack Ebel, UCF Nightly News.
Thanks, Jack. Yesterday, SGA announced the 3 tickets running for student body president and vice president. Current Speaker of the Senate, Kate Zona, will run for president with her running mate, Jarrell Jones. And Senator Brian Zagraki is also running for president with Alex Bennett. Richard Stein and Mohammed Barame got their names on the ballot just before the deadline. You can catch the live debate between the candidates on March 24th right here on Nightly News. We all know that texting and driving can be dangerous, but what other distractions are on the road? Nightly News reporter De'Ara Bradley looks into the effects of distracted driving.
The Centers for Disease and Control reports that each day, more than 1,000 injuries and more than 9 deaths occur in the U.S. as a result of distracted driving. And college students make up more than half of these distracted drivers. Some UCF students recognize they do multitask while driving, but the UCF Sociology Department says we don't do it as well as we think.
The point of life is not to be constantly doing things. We need to ask ourselves, why do we feel the need to multitask in the first place? What is so very pressing?
Police officers say around 70% of accidents are due to drivers attempting to multitask. As spring break approaches, the number of these accidents increases. Officers are paying special attention to those heading out of the city to their vacations and those coming in to visit Orlando. Officer Stevens says there are many distractions when you're in the car. Something as simple as changing your radio station or attending to your passengers. Officer Peter Stevens also says traveling out of town during breaks requires different precautions.
If you're not familiar with the area, and local drivers are, they can be hazardous to you because they'll cut you off thinking that you don't know where you're going. As students prepare to travel this weekend, Officer Stevens wants Knights to set their GPSs before driving. In Orlando, De'Ara Bradley, UCF Nightly News.
UCF PD says pedestrians who are walking and multitasking can also be hazardous to drivers. Well, Stephanie, I don't really feel like multitasking this spring break, and as far as I'm considered, it starts today.
I know. I think I'm actually going to head to the pool after this. Kelsey, what can you tell us about the weather?
Yeah, I mean, I agree. Spring break does start today. Right now, we are looking at 64 degrees. Girls, I wouldn't even bother trying to make that hair cute today because we're at 81% humidity right now. And though we only have 17% chance of rain, I would go ahead and keep a light jacket and an umbrella with you just in case. We do have 11 miles per hour winds, but I'm thinking that spring break is going to be beautiful in general. What are you guys up to?
Nice. I have no plans yet, but I know I'm definitely going to hit the beach.
Yeah, well, it's perfect for it.
Perfect. When we come back, see what UCF is doing to make its hearing impaired students get an equal education.
And find out how Orlando's bike share program is doing a few months after its launch.
A recent study by the Public Interest Research Group reports millennials are driving less and cycling more. The study shows a 1.5% decrease in driving by 16 to 24-year-olds. This week, students here at UCF celebrated Bike Week, and events on campus aim to create a bike-friendly environment. And one student says it's a quick way to get around a large campus.
It helps me make sure I get to class on time. And the biggest thing is it's a lot faster than walking because the campus is really big and it is gorgeous to walk here, and I love walking, but at the same token, I'm still pushing deadlines, so I'm trying to get from point A to point B as quickly as possible.
And as Bike Week closes here on campus, thousands of bikers from around the country will make their way to Daytona Beach. But the bikes around here look a little different. The 74th Annual Bike Week fires up today. With over 50 events listed on the official website, some locals are hoping businesses will be roaring along with those motorcycles. One local business owner told Nightly News about the extra work they put in for Bike Week.
Us being a small family-run business, on a scale of 1 to 10, normally we're putting at about 9. During Bike Week, we're at about 29.
Cities across the world have enjoyed bike shares for years, and Orlando added its recent system for users to check out for a few hours. Nightly News reporter Charles Baber found out how Orlando's program is doing.
Bikeshare has been cruising the streets of Orlando since January, and in the first month of its operation, almost 400 people have rented the bikes. But the program is still in its early stages. Only 20 bicycles are available for rent at 4 different stations across downtown Orlando. Marianne Horn of Metroplan Orlando, a transportation planning organization, says it's important for people to utilize multiple modes of transportation.
The transportation system really means having a lot of ways to get around that all work together. And when people travel in different modes and not everybody is doing the same thing, then we're going to get away from having the kind of traffic congestion we have when everybody depends on their car.
Orlando currently has bike lanes on a few major roads in downtown Orlando. But in the meantime, Metroplan Orlando says its goal is to educate cyclists and drivers about bikes. Michael Chris from David's World Cycle says recreational cycling in Orlando is becoming more popular.
A lot more riding in the lifestyle world, where a lot of people like a lot of the beach cruises, a lot of the recreational riding, a lot of family rides.
While Nightly News was downtown, no one checked out bikes, but area residents said the program is very popular on weekends. Reporting in Orlando, Charles Baber, UCF Nightly News.
The bike share program is expanding to 200 bikes and 16 stations by the end of spring.
Recently, Harvard and MIT faced lawsuits about education accessibility issues with their deaf and hard of hearing students. This got Nightly News wondering what UCF was doing for our community. I spoke to the people responsible for learning accessibility to see where UCF stands. This is senior Jacob Salem. He's a political science major, involved around campus, and he's one of UCF's 7 deaf students. He says when he came to his freshman orientation, there was no interpreter.
And they're like, oh, I'm sorry, we have it scheduled for another day. So I left. I had to drive back 3 hours and then come back another time to drive back for another orientation.
Jacob says new students tell him they're not having the same problems he did.
Recently, they told me they were here on the first day and they had interpreters provided and ready to interpret for them.
Director of Student Disability Services, Dr. Adam Meyer, says ideally everything would be fully accessible tomorrow. But it's not as easy as that.
We currently work with over 40 students who need either captioning or interpreting, so managing the logistics of that can be difficult.
Wendy Howard is an instructional designer at the Center for Distributed Learning. She says part of the challenge of getting classes captioned is that there's not always enough time.
Quite often, there's a very small window between getting notified by SDS that a student has an accommodation request and the actual start of classes. So it's always better, we try to emphasize, to be proactive so that you're not scrambling at the last minute to caption that video.
Dr. Meyer says communication between faculty, SDS, and CDL is something they're working on.
And so that's, I think, our next big area where we realize that we are both doing good things, but also could take it to the next level.
Jacob says sometimes he notices things around campus without captioning. When he does, he tells UCF officials who say they'll take care of it.
But will they when I'm gone? I don't know. who's going to be there to nag and remind them like I've always done.
Jacob, SDS, and CDL say accessibility is a little easier with some help. They urge students to take an active role in their own rights to accessible education.
After the break, we'll tell you how you can score a free ride to the first Orlando City Lions game.
And Robert Sutton will have our top stories from around the nation. Stay tuned. Sunrail is offering weekend service for the first time ever, and it's all for the Orlando City Soccer Club's first game of the season. The train service will be free. A handful of organizations provided the funding to make it all possible. Free weekend service will also be available for the Winter Park Sidewalk Arts Festival on March 20th. Sunrail doesn't have any immediate plans for permanent weekend service. You know, Stephanie, I love soccer, and free rides there is even better. But I wish they could go all around the nation so I could see all the games.
And speaking of, now it's time to take a look at our national headlines with Robert Sutton. Robert?
Thanks, Stephanie. Now, here's a quick look at what's going on throughout the nation. A challenge to Obamacare in the Supreme Court this week puts the health care of more than 8 million Americans in jeopardy. The Supreme Court is hearing a case challenging the wording of the Affordable Care Act. Opponents of the law argue its wording specifies subsidies are only available through an exchange established by the state. Subsidies millions now rely on to pay for health care. Florida is one of the 34 states with federally run exchanges where people could be directly affected. And Boston is on the verge of having its snowiest winter ever. With more than 100 inches of snow this winter, streets paved in ice have become a regular sight in the Northeast. And now a massive storm stretching across almost a dozen states is bringing sleet, ice, and up to 10 inches of snow in some places. Plows are hitting the roads to keep up with the snowfall in what is hopefully one of the last storms of the season. And all that snow looks rough, but luckily for us, things are looking good here in Florida. Kelsey Walker has our forecast. Kelsey?
Yeah, that is looking pretty brutal, Robert. But down here in Florida, we're doing a little bit better than them. Over here in Orlando, we're at 69 degrees. And down in Tampa, they're at 72. Up in Tallahassee, 58. Jackson, 53. Miami's rocking it at 81. Let's go into our cloud coverage for the state. Okay, so over here in Ocala is completely covered. We're at 100% coverage. All right, down in Tampa, we have 93. And up in Jacksonville, they're at 88% coverage clouds. Let's shoot on over to the precipitation map.
It's black.
Okay.
It's black for her.
All right, the precipitation Florida's only going to be at 20% going into this week. Don't expect a lot of rain over your spring break because we're looking pretty good. If we want to go into the national temperature map. All right, and up north, it's going to be really snowy. They're really cold up there, and down here, we're actually rocking it pretty hot down here. In the middle, in the Midwest, they're getting a little, just a little bit of chilly weather, but we're doing okay. Let's go into the 5-day forecast. All right, and Saturday's looking pretty good at 72 and a low of 57. Again, 0% chances of rain for Saturday and Sunday. You are going to have a great weekend. Monday, we're going in, have light showers and a high of 79, low of 64. Going into Tuesday, we have a 20% chance of rain and an 82%. We're looking sunny, though. You guys are going to have a great spring break with great weather. Back to you, Lila and Stephanie.
Thank you, Kelsey. Coming up on Nightly News, the Orlando City Lions scored and shot this weekend, selling its first game at the Citrus Bowl.
And UCF baseball went up against SEC powerhouse UF. Find out who came out on top.
Welcome back, Knights fans. I'm Natalie Pellicetti, and here's a quick look at your UCF sports update. This was a big beat week for the UCF baseball team. The number 9 Knights played the SEC powerhouse Florida Gators. UCF split the home-and-home game series with the first game ending in a dramatic fashion.
Freshman pitcher Kyle Marsh started on the mound with 2 strikeouts and a putout at the top of the first. It was a slow start, but in the 4th inning, UCF was able to push 2 runs across. James Vasquez singled in Eric Barber, and that gave UCF a 2-run lead. UCF turned a trio of double plays in multiple innings, keeping the Gators' offense at a standstill. The Knights held on for a 4-3 win at home. Fast forward 24 hours later, they traveled to Gainesville for the second series game. Florida jumped out to a 5-0 lead in the first 3 innings and didn't look back from there. UCF tried to make a comeback in the 4th inning, with UCF senior shortstop Dylan Moore connecting on the solo home run. And in the 8th, sophomore Eugene Vasquez sent the ball over the fence for a homer after coming in as a reserve. But wild pitches and multiple errors hurt UCF throughout the game, and the Knights couldn't seem to get in any sort of rhythm. Despite the 10-2 loss, Coach Rooney is proud of his team's resilience.
We've seen a lot of confidence. We've seen a lot of poise. That's really the biggest thing you take as a team. Take away, the balls and strikes and the at-bats. Our guys have continually fought back, and we've won a lot of close games.
We want to be where we're at right now, but we got to keep working hard and just keep grinding through the season. And, hopefully make it to a regional and keep going from there.
The UCF baseball team has now locked in a 4th win against a ranked opponent this season, and a big reason is because of Jamarcus Woods. He was named American Athletic Conference Player of the Week. Reporter Tom Ebel will have more on Woods' success in our next half hour. And 1 week after becoming nationally ranked, the UCF softball team took on the Maryland Terrapins. Number 15 UCF beat Maryland in a big comeback. They trailed 6-5 until sophomore Brittany Solis hit a 3-run home run, leading the Knights to the 8-6 walk-off in the bottom of the 7th inning. Coach Lourdes Gillespie says she's proud of how much her girls fought for their win.
Being down 5-1 and fighting to come back to win that game, and most hits that we've had all season in a single game with 11 hits. I mean, it was needed for us to get that spark back, and I think they're ready to play now.
The Black and Gold open the UCF Knights Invitational on Friday. They'll host Kent State at 3 p.m. and Bradley at 5:30. That's all the time we have for sports. Stay tuned for our next sports update in our second hour show. Back to you, Stephanie and Lila.
Thanks, Natalie. Coming up in the next half hour, a night in Orlando shows you some spring break hotspots that are just a drive away.
And you won't believe what one UCF rugby player is doing this spring break. What about you, Stephanie? What do you have planned?
Honestly, I'm gonna definitely just be relaxing. I've had a crazy semester, so I'm ready to just take a little break.
I think I'm right there with you. All this advice with multitasking and staying calm, I'm gonna take it for sure.
Definitely. I mean, I think everyone here is looking for a week off, honestly. It's what we definitely need.
Well, in the second show, there's a story about what we're gonna do in spring break, so what do you think?
Stay tuned to watch.